Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayhon, and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Character Concept Optimized, where we take a look at multi-class builds and optimize them to their maximum capacity. And, well, today we're doing another Blood Hunter multi-class. Much like with the Blood Oath, I already know what a lot of people think about the Blood Hunter. It's not official material, it shouldn't be part of this video, blah-de-blah-de-blah. I consider it official material because it was created by one of the people on the Dungeons & Dragons team, Matthew Mercer. We got that? Good. Now, we're doing Blood Hunter and Ranger. Another joke. Some people don't like Ranger. I even said in my tier list video that is not the best spellcaster. Blah, blah, blah. I get it. But Rangers are still good classes. And they pair very well thematically with the Blood Hunter. Both the Blood Hunter and the Ranger have abilities to where they are hunting unnatural creatures, the supernatural. Aberrations, celestials, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, undead. They hunt what is not normal. They hunt monsters. And they have abilities that really just make fighting these monsters a lot easier, whether it be the Crimson Rite or the Favored Foe feature. And that is why I wanted to meld these two together for the perfect monster hunting class build. So, let's go ahead and get into things. Now, also, before we dive right on in, there is a variant Hemocraft ability score that is optional for the Blood Hunter. Normally, you would use Intelligence, but you also have the option, if you work with your Dungeon Master, to use Wisdom instead. So, that's one thing to think about when asking your DM if you can play with the Blood Hunter class. So, what are the goals for today's build? Well, we need to know how many levels in Ranger and Blood Hunter we are going to have. Both the Ranger and the Blood Hunter have fighting style options, so we'll need to know which ones we're going to need. We're also going to need to know if we're using any optional features from the Ranger, since the ones in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything are technically optional. Blood Curses and Crimson Rites from the Blood Hunter are going to be very important. It's how we get our extra damage. We're also going to need to know the subclasses of both of these classes, since those are what actually helps us with hunting our monsters. We're also going to need to know spells from the Ranger, and if we choose the right subclass from the Blood Hunter as well. Which, don't worry, we aren't. I just want to make it clear that it is an option. We also need to make sure we have the correct race and background for this build to be the most min-maxed it can be. This build is going to be focusing on tracking, high damage output, ranged attacks, and staying out of sight. The monsters that you hunt need to be afraid of you, and they're going to flee. However, you're going to be able to chase after them and find them if they get out of your sight. They can run, but there is nowhere for them to hide. Now, to no one's surprise, the first race that I want to mention are the Vedalken. These guys are just way too easy to be on an optimized build because of their Vedalken Dispassion. They have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. That's huge. Not to mention their tireless precision, which I forgot to grab a tool for, is amazing. You get to add a 1d4 to the ability check or chosen tool of skill. That's great. I'll be able to locate things a lot easier. I really don't like this race. However, the abilities of this race are too good to pass up. So they are my first pick for this build. But there's another option. The Giff. Hippofolk. These were just released in the newest Spelljammer set. And I was able to find this on someone else's video since I don't have the book yet. But these guys are awesome. The Hippofolk have some really good abilities that will help with just about any good range option build, which is what we're going for. We have 3 abilities to go after. 2 of them are our most important ones. We have the Astral Spark. You get bonus force damage to any simple or martial weapon equal to your proficiency bonus. Now, it says simple and martial weapons. Firearms are not simple or martial. They are a third weapon type. So this bonus won't go to any firearms you happen to be wielding with proficiency because of the firearms mastery. Also, you ignore the reload property of firearms. No disadvantage on firearms attacks from long range. So go past that long range, you're still good, you're still able to hit. Well, it says no disadvantage, so if you go past the maximum range, you're still going to not hit, but it's still pretty darn good to snipe with your firearms. The most important one being the bad news from Exandria. This thing can deal 2d12 damage, piercing damage, so we're going to be utilizing that. Now, the more powerful firearm that you can get your hands on, the antimatter rifle, is basically a singular point fireball on one target, which is hilarious, but it does necrotic damage, and your Dungeon Master probably won't allow you to use it because it's just too powerful. So we're just going with the bad news because it is technically one of the higher damaging weapons. You also get Hippo Build, which is just powerful build for the Hippofolk. So, yeah. And like I said, Astral Spark isn't going to give you a bonus on your firearms because it is a firearm, not a simple or martial weapon. So, my pick for this build is the Giff because of the fact that we get the firearms mastery, letting us get weapon proficiency in firearms, and we get to ignore the reload property. That's just awesome. So I can just go snipe, snipe, snipe. Oh, it's awesome. Alright, before I start drooling over the ugly, ugly hippo, let's move on to background. Much like with the Blood Oath, there are 2 that will need good consideration. Haunted One, and really any Strixhaven student, but we're going with Silver Quill because we get a good set of spells to choose from. With the Haunted One, you get access to the Monster Hunters pack as an equipment piece, and your future Haunt of Darkness is still pretty good. Not as good as the Silver Quill students' Strixhaven Initiate and bonus spells that you get to add to your Ranger spell list, but it is still a very good option. and both are up for consideration for this build. Now, Ranger. I'm going over every one of these just to make sure we are very clear on what's going on. We want the optional feature Favored Foe. This will give us a 1d6 extra damage to the creature we have marked with it as our favored enemy. Quote unquote. Natural Explorer is the original Ranger feature. We're not going with the optional one. I'm not doing the optional one because Natural Explorer gives us some good features. Oh, Drahon, this is very situational. Why are you doing this? Work with your Dungeon Master. Ask them what setting it is in. What monsters are you fighting? What terrain are you exploring? If you guys have a session 0, pay attention. The Dungeon Master will work with you. Yes, the Ranger is very situational, but guess what? You are always going to be in the correct situation if you work with your Dungeon Master. We good? Good. Fighting style. Blind fighting. You get blind sight of 10 feet, and you can see any invisible creature within that range, again, 10 feet, unless it successfully hides from you. This is pretty good. I sort of like this, which is why I chose it instead of 2-weapon fighting. If we're going hand-to-hand combat against a ghost, I want to be able to punch that ghost. Primeval awareness. Not primal, primeval. We now know what's in the area. And that's good news. We want this. We don't want any extra spells. Those spells are useless. We don't get any of the good ones until we get very high in Ranger levels, and we're not getting anywhere close to there. We want primeval awareness. And for our subclass, we want the Gloomstalker. Trust me on this, I have already gone over everything else. Gloomstalker is the best bet. And that is because Gloomstalker spells. We get Disguise Self, Rope Trick, and Fear. We get the ability Dread Ambusher, plus 10-foot speed, and we can attack an additional time when taking the attack action. The additional attack deals an extra 1d8 damage. Holy cow. So at 5th level, in Ranger, Gloomstalker, we have a total of 3 attacks. And that's not all. Umbral Sight. We have Dark Vision of 60 feet. While in darkness, you are invisible to creatures that rely on dark vision to see you in that darkness. Oh. This should be a Blood Hunter feature. This is way too good of a feature. Iron Mind. We now have Wisdom saving throw proficiency. Yes, please. If we were to pair this with the Vedalken, extra bonuses. Finally, at 11th level Ranger, we're going with 12th level because of the ability score improvements, we get Stalker's Flurry. Once on each of your turns when you miss with a weapon attack, you can make another weapon attack as part of the same action. Yes! Boom, boom, boom. If you miss, you can hit. This is an awesome Ranger subclass. I almost went with the Horizon Walker for thematical purposes, but we're not here for themes, we are here to min-max! Speaking of, we have another class to go over. Blood Hunter. 8 levels in Blood Hunter. We get a fighting style. We're going to go with archery. Crimson Right, Frozen, and Storm will be our picks. Blood Curses. Anxious and Exposure. We already went over this in the Blood Oath video, so if you want to go ahead and see what that's about, go ahead and check them out. And also make sure to go to D&D Beyond to find the Blood Hunter features. That way you know exactly what's going on. Subclass. Order of the Ghost Slayer. Best subclass for the Blood Hunter, hands down. Especially if we're talking about monster hunting. Yes, the mutant and the Lycan are really good by themselves, but Order of the Ghost Slayer is what we need to fight undead and constructs. Because the Curse Specialist lets us curse something without blood. Normally we wouldn't be able to do it, but with this we can curse a machine or a skelly. That is awesome! We also have Aether Walk, which is pretty good. That's more abilities that we can use to get around the battlefield and kill our targets. This is amazing. Now, one last thing. Like I said, the Hunter's Bane does use a lot of our necessary features. And the Blood Maledict has our good curses, Crimson Right, and the Brand of Castation is pretty darn good. We almost got the Grim Psychometry, which was an amazing feature for our Blood Hunter, but because we are going with more ability score improvements, we had to ditch it, unfortunately. So, feats. The 3 feats that are going to need to be most apparent here are Piercer, Sharpshooter, and the Eldritch Adept Devil's Sight. This will give us Dark Vision for 120 feet, and we can see in magical darkness. So, if we pick the spell Darkness, which we get from being a Silver Quill student, we can put somebody in a bubble of darkness and still be able to hit them. Now, here's the only weakness with this build, and we actually have it ourselves. Blind Sight. We have it, but we're also weak to it. So, if you were to put somebody in darkness, and they have dark vision, then your Gloomstalker feature will be super useful. However, there are creatures that use blind sight to see. They don't need to see you to see you. They basically go off of your heat, your movement. They can hear you. They can smell you. That is blind sight. They don't need to actually look at you to see you. And that is the weakness of this build. Going in when they are blind, but they can still see you. So, yeah. That's the main weakness. I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. In case Dungeon Masters are in the comments section, why in the world did you make this? This is super duper powerful. It is ruining my games. That is the weakness. Use it. Have a creature that uses blind sight. like a dragon. Alright, now that that's out of the way, recommended spell list. You get 7 spells. Now, since we do have the Silver Quill student, we do have access to the Darkness spell. So I would go ahead and trade one of the 2nd level spells out for Darkness. That way we can utilize the Devil's Sight to our full advantage. However, these are the ones that I recommend if we're going with the Haunted One background. Ensnaring Strike, Hail of Thorns, and Zephyr Strike. Cordon of Arrows, Healing Spirit, and Pass Without Trace. And our 3rd level spell, Conjure Barrage. We're going with as much damage as we possibly can. And these spells work perfectly. Healing Spirit is in here simply to help our allies heal. While we are away from the battle, just sniping our target, our allies are in the midst of it. So we need to make sure Healing Spirit is out on the field so they can heal. And with that, that is the end of this video. I do hope that you enjoyed. I will be back next week for some more builds, and maybe some more guides. Because Spelljammer is upon us. And that is going to be an exciting read. Until next time, this has been Drayhan, and I am offline.